To understand what's real, we lay out events sequentially, connecting one memory to another, inching our way back to the present, a place where we can process our immediate surroundings. The human brain is imperfect at this task, leaving us with a skewed image of reality. Noah Hawley's take on mutant prodigy David Haller shows how an understanding of what is can disintegrate further when the mind is even less reliable.
All good in the head now?
A few things about Legion feels familiar. There's a team, led by a doctor/mother figure, that's made a home at a secluded facility, dedicated to protecting mutants from government agencies that would detain or kill them. What Hawley changes about the X-Men formula is turning away from more common examples of marginalization.
Why don't you just leave us alone?
Yeah, to do what?
I don't know. Fall in love. Have babies.
Well, see, now that's a problem, because your babies and my babies, who wins that sandbox squabble?
To focus on mutants that are mentally ill. Unlike the Xavier Mansion, which uses its preparatory school to conceal the X-Men facilities underground, Summerland is reminiscent of a psychiatric retreat. Its open campus does little to separate patients from clinicians. Mutants arrive, meet the team, get their sleeping arrangements, and soon begin therapy, alone and in groups, so they can better learn how to deal with mutant abilities that have influenced their psychiatric diagnoses. The Loudermilk twins, Carrie and Carrie, share the same body. Carrie is as intelligent as his sister is athletic, but he lacks the ability to defend himself. Carrie has made herself responsible for her brother's safety, and in turn he fulfills her basic biological needs.
He makes me laugh and I keep him safe. If that's weird, I'm okay with it.
This, along with some family disruption while growing up, left the Loudermilk twins with dependent personality disorder. They suffer an acute anxiety at the thought of separation and find it difficult to function without some reassurance that the other is nearby.
You see how unhealthy that is.
What's it, who's it hurting? That's my,
That's what I want to know.
When Sydney Barrett's skin makes contact with another person, their minds switch places for a time. In the case of mutants, she gains control of their abilities as well. The transient nature of Syd's mind, hopping from body to body, led to the development of an antisocial personality disorder. To be more specific, her initial apathy towards others, disinterest in social engagement, and refusing to be touched are characteristics of schizoid personality disorder.
Oh, that's sad.
That's sad? You're in a mental hospital.
Even after exposure, talk therapy, and increased comfort with David, Sid is unable to make physical contact without discomfort.
We could hold hands.
Can I be honest? It's really uncomfortable for me. There's this feeling, the closer I get to someone, it's like being covered with ants.
Each Summerland mutant has an ability that reinforces an existing mental illness, or that ability leads to the development of a disorder. In spite of that, they found a way to function. But David is a more complicated patient. David has been known to lie and obfuscate during sessions, ignore treatment guidelines, self-medicate, reject prescribed medication, act on violent impulses, and has attempted suicide. As a high-risk patient, David's treatment options have been significantly reduced. It's why he's institutionalized, and why Amy, his sister and only surviving family member, is comfortable keeping him there. It's not to say Amy doesn't care for her brother.
Why can't you have what everyone else has, a nice home, a family?
But looking after someone who is mentally ill, especially with serious disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, can be burdensome, irrespective of her intent. Then there's the added complication of David being a mutant. David is told that the things he sees, the voices he hears, the monsters that have made a home in his head, are the result of psychic and kinetic abilities. That he's just a powerful but undisciplined mutant.
Taking you back to those moments in your past when you first felt your so-called illness coming on. I'll show you that it was really just your gift.
Before David can truly grasp this, Carrie makes another discovery.
I think we were wrong.
No.
The whole approach, treating him like the others, he is schizophrenic.
This is not mental illness.
I mean split mind. This monster isn't David, it's a parasite of some kind.
Carrie's identified Amal Farouk, the Shadow King, now masquerading as David's best friend Lenny. Everyone then believes that the psychological torture Lenny has inflicted on David is the reason for his diagnosis. Mental illness as superpower and monster as metaphor are common tropes that hide impressive abilities and eccentric personalities behind a grave misunderstanding, and Hawley introduces these ideas, only to undermine them. Both David's brain and his mutant abilities express themselves like psychosis. He experiences tactile, visual, and auditory hallucinations with no discernible point of origin. Hears voices that comment on his thoughts and actions, thoughts that communicate with him directly. Believes his thoughts are being broadcast elsewhere, that he can hear the thoughts of others, has delusions of being controlled, and interacts with recurring figures that exist only within his mind. Hawley's visual language lends itself to communicating the strange and distressing aspects of David's condition. Childhood memories play back as if through a projector, pointing to their comforting and counterfactual nature. Cinematic framing squeeze as David as moments become tense. Cameras pull away as abilities explode, showing how small he is compared to what is going on inside. Locations are fuzzy upon introduction, as if they're not yet fully constructed or populated. Panes of glass physically isolate him from others, allowing his paranoia to build.
Who knows how many commandos are gang-banging your sister right in the cornhole, but you're right, that's good. Work on you, man. That's what matters.
Like his favorite drug, David's idyllic fantasies, warmest memories, hopes for the future, and moments of clarity are painted in calming blues. Lenny, whether her presence is seen or merely felt, frightens David, stresses and manipulates him, unlocking a destructive force that bathes his world in red. But the aspect of David's schizophrenia that's communicated most consistently is his relationship to time. Humans have no sensory organ dedicated to processing time, so we rely on stimuli to process the present. The problem is each sensation travels its own path, at its own speed, on the way to the brain. Waiting for these signals to arrive takes us just outside the present and into the specious present, when the brain goes through a process of temporal binding, unifying pertinent information and possibly discarding certain elements to create an image of what just took place. It's an imperfect method of processing time, and it's easily manipulated.
You're saying after you entered the body of a woman and escaped from a mental hospital where all the patients had magically been sealed inside of their rooms, you think you saw me getting out of a car?
Well, you don't have to be a dick about it, and yes, it was you.
Before engineers figured out how to synchronize image and sound, they feared audiences would notice actors opening their mouths before they spoke. They discovered that if video and audio signals arrived within 100 milliseconds of each other, it created an illusion of being synchronized. That tenth of a second is just enough time for some small detail to slip by and compromise our awareness. This creates a post-dictive account of the present, one that takes information beyond the specious present to edit a memory, making our recollections unreliable.
Have you guys noticed the door in the hall? It's not always there.
What?
How can a door be there and not be there at the same time?
The subject, you confusing one hallway with another.
I'm not making it up.
Confusing is what I said, is in the interchangeability of the hallways and how one memory could be confused with another memory.
A healthy brain is bad at processing time, but one with schizophrenia must deal with several disruptions that complicate the task further. Schizophrenics experience dopamine deficiency, affecting the ability to process sensation, meaning the different speeds at which touch, sight, and sound reach the brain are made even more irregular. Their internal clock runs at variable speeds, putting temporal binding out of rhythm, altering how memories are formed. It's theorized that this disorder of time processing contributes to positive symptoms, resulting in delusions. Even the amygdala, which plays a major role in the formation of memory and the expression and processing of emotions, changes the speed at which the brain collects sensory data.
Correct. You have an extremely large amygdala.
Thank you.
During a stressful encounter, the amygdala can bind more information together, creating a temporal illusion that makes moments feel much longer than they are. It's an opportunity for certain elements to escape recollection or assume a different form.
Every time David sees this thing or realizes it's there, this creature makes him forget it, rewrites his memory.
David's memories and understanding of the present has made it difficult to know when this all takes place, though there's no real attempt to conceal that information. People dress and sometimes talk like it's the 60s.
You got what the kids these days call moxie.
They even use terms for psychiatric diagnoses that are no longer in use.
Me? No, I'm manic depression.
But there's technology too advanced for that era, or even the present. However inconsistent this appears, it serves as an almost reliable method of processing David's memories and abstract thoughts, while also acknowledging when his life was put on hold. Like the name of the hospital he's called home for 6 years, Clockworks, David's understanding of time cannot be separated from his mental illnesses. How events unite past and present, speed up, slow down, play out of order, and skip ahead, can't be influenced by David or Lenny. Neither of them have an ability related to time. Oliver, a fellow psychic, also suffers from a fleeting memory and broken internal clock, suggesting that the loss of time is a consequence of getting lost in one's mind.
Sorry. I forgot about your, I had a similar proclivity, malady. I forget the word. What's the word? I've been here a long time, and things tend to, drift. Right.
Despite evidence suggesting David's illnesses are independent of his abilities or nightmares created by Lenny, he still has to deal with what goes on in his mind, and he's done so mostly alone. Depicting the insidious nature of mental illness tests the limit of narrative description. Increasing the emotional weight and chronicling physical change is difficult enough without having to make sense of the bizarre sense of comfort one can find when an illness becomes familiar. Psychotic episodes, as reported by patients with schizophrenia, commonly include confusing and disturbing hallucinations. It's also been reported that certain recurring figures and voices have presented themselves as passive, even friendly.
Are you my friend? Because I could really use...
Yes, of course I'm your friend. Come on, it's just... I'm Betsy Tough Love, your mean friend.
What makes Lenny so dangerous is her duplicity. Abusing David isolated him and made it impossible to be with anyone for too long. Trapping him in a cycle of addiction
Mazel tov.
led to institutionalization, allowing her to get close enough to one day consume him whole. The women in David's life, the doting mother, the sympathetic ex-girlfriend, the fretful big sister, have given him incentive to get better. But they can never compete with Lenny's influence.
Such a pretty boy. And then you people started putting all these
ideas in his head.
She dominates the screen so completely, it's impossible to ignore the color red, signaling her control of David is nearly absolute. Blue is more nuanced. In a way, Sid is the color blue. She isn't just an extension of David's hopes for normalcy. She's the only one capable of framing the seriousness of his condition in a way that promises a life without Lenny. Like their relationship with reality, David and Sid's tragic romance keeps an expected intimacy at a distance. There's fear at its mere mention, and courage is required to come closer. Upon actual contact, disaster strikes. This is similar to how mental illness can manifest. Depression subsides for a time, positive symptoms fade, illness somehow manages itself, and something resembling an objective reality comes into focus. But it's a trick of the mind. These manic periods don't last, and in time they can appear to have been a distraction from the true nature of mental illness.
Remember all the stories? Awake for 72 hours straight, the frantic alphabetizing, and then I tied a knot.
What are you talking about?
David has tried to stick to the respected wisdom on mental health. He's taken medication, has put together a support system, and has participated in therapy, both conventional and a touch of the artistic variety. But these routines fail to prepare David for the life outside Dr. Poole's office, outside Clockworks. Unlike physical injury, recovery, in this case, isn't easy to define. There's no way to undo mental illness.
There is no before, not once the sickness starts. That's the lie, the cruelest joke. How somehow with the right dosage, the right therapy, stand on one leg, touch your nose, we could all go back to... what?
Are David's psychotic episodes the result of runaway telepathy? Can years of drug abuse, therapy, and broken relationships be explained away by a revenge plot that is really meant for someone else? It doesn't matter. Strange sights, sounds, and inexplicable occurrences have haunted David's mind for so long that it's impossible to distinguish being a mutant, being tortured, and being mentally ill. It's possible that none of this is real, in a material sense, that much of what's taken place so far exists solely within David's mind. Falling victim to such delusions may not be as terrifying as it sounds, provided David can continue his flirtation with reality and find the clarity of mind to choose between red and blue.